I'm beating every N64 game, and I mean all of them. The twist is, the next game I play is randomly selected, so I have no clue what's coming next. This is the journey to beating every N64 game. Hey, welcome to another episode. If you do enjoy this video, consider giving it a like, as it does help the channel a lot. And if you like this series, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one. Last time we were killing Dracula, and this time we're racing again. Game number 46, Micro Machines 64 Turbo. Released in 1999 for the N64, this game was developed by Codemasters and published by Midway. It's racing time again, and we're doing it with toy cars. If you don't know, Micro Machines were a brand of toy car, kinda like Hot Wheels. I'd personally never heard of it, but I guess it got popular enough to have games made after it. The game started with me selecting my character. You can choose between Spider, Jethro, Walter, Cherry, Dwayne, Jade, Chen, and Bonnie. Naturally, I went with Dwayne because he's the coolest looking dude. The main single player mode in this was the challenge mode, so we will complete that to beat this game. So yeah, it's a racing game, but the driving's way different than any game I'd played on this console so far. It's like an overhead view, almost like a 2D game. The cars go very fast and you can make them turn very aggressively. My favorite part of the game is all the different environments you race in. Like, this first track has a giant pool table with a route someone has drawn out in chalk, but the stuff is sitting on the table are part of the track. I guess it's supposed to give the feel of being a track some kid set up in their house or something like that. And then this second course, we're in like a science lab or something where the track is drawn out with some powder. Oh, and we're all tanks now and we can blow each other up. There's a bunch of different vehicles you will use in this game, and they all drive quite differently. Like, the tank's incredibly slow and easy to steer compared to that first car. Oh yeah, I got second place on that first race and first place on this one. The next race was on a kitchen table with lots of stuff spilled everywhere. In this one, the car drove insanely fast and the turning not so abrupt. It had a lot of drifting and it was just so different from the last two races. And this race revealed the big flaw of this game, the camera. The top-down view is nice to look at and all if you're just watching, but when you're going this fast, it's a nightmare. You have basically no time to react to an upcoming turn. Tracks with these fast cars will turn into just memorizing the track rather than reacting to it. I absolutely got last place here, and Dwayne was not happy. It turns out you have to get either first or second place on a track to move on to the next one, but you get 3 continues to keep trying the track more times without losing progress. I had to take this one super slow to be able to win, but that won't work on the harder circuits. Also, when you get first place on a race, you unlock a new car. It doesn't really do anything for the game, just a completionist type thing where you collect all the cars like the real Micro Machines toys. The last race was on top of some table at a fancy restaurant. These track environments, man, they're so cool. We were driving dump trucks this time around too, which are insanely slow. Since this is the last race in the circuit, you have to get first place to win. Nothing else works. I did get first place and I completed the beginner circuit. Nothing new special, you know? You'd expect this one to be pretty easy. Next up was the tricky circuit. The first race was way different as we were driving boats on someone's pond. It controlled way differently and it gets hard to get used to all these different types of vehicles. You may think in this game that since the track's kind of a suggestion, you could just cut through the middle to skip a bunch of it. Well, the devs thought of that and put a system to prevent it. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but in most places if you try to take a shortcut like that, you just blow up. It took a few tries, but I got used to the boat and won this race. The next race was another one of those science lab courses, and this one had the first truly wild event in it. Near the start, you get sucked up into a tube leading to some Bunsen burner contraption that warps you to the other side of the room. It's pretty intense, but the tracks get even more crazy later on. This one was honestly a lot of fun to drive. Then there was another dinner table track. One thing to talk about is the power-ups in this game. They're honestly a super minor part of the game, but they are there. There's a few of them, like where you get a shield around you that pushes other cars, or a claw that extends and grabs the other cars. The most annoying one was the hammer. If the computer gets this one, they basically never miss. I knew it as soon as I passed. What do you want from me? It just crushes your car and you lose a ton of time. It took a while to beat this one, and remember, I have to go all the way back to the beginning of the circuit if I lose all my continues. Next race was in the sand, and we were all driving dune buggies. These things are just absolutely out of control. The turns, they're just pure chaos. Despite how awful I was driving, I barely snagged second place, and that was good enough to move on to the final race. This one was another one on the family dinner table or whatever. Even though the environments get reused, the tracks themselves are all different. I can really appreciate how many different tracks they designed for this game. We were in the dump trucks again, which they're fairly slow, but they don't handle turns the best. And I have to get first place on this since it's the last race in the circuit. On my third attempt, I did take first place, completing the tricky level. Then came the difficult circuit. This is where the game started to get, well, difficult. Right away, this one starts with us crossing a gap using a breadstick. While a really neat idea, it's super tough to get over this thing safely. Bridges like this are going to become a very regular thing from here on out. The music in this game, there's decent music when you're in the menus and when you finish a race, but while you're actually racing, it's just dead silence. I wasn't too big a fan of that because it's nice to hear something while you're playing, you know, like either a commentator or music. That one wasn't super hard, but the next one certainly was. We were driving semi-trucks in someone's yard, and these things are fast. You'd think they'd be slow, but nah. This course had so many tight turns, and the camera was just miserable for this one. By the time the camera had shifted, the turn had already appeared. There was no option other than just memorize it all by lots and lots of repetition. And I'd only get 3 tries before I had to repeat the breadstick course, so building memory, it was even harder. It took about half an hour to get past it the first time, but I did it. But then I was immediately thrown into a new course I'd never seen. It was back on the pool table, and this time we had to ride along the very edge of the table without much room to move. The monster trucks turned pretty well, but I still lost all my continues and had to go back to that breadstick level. It took like 20 minutes or so to get past this one for the first time, and man, it was a close finish. Oh, we take those. Next was another science lab track, and this one got nuts. At one point you get absorbed into a microscope, then you're driving inside of some cell culture being examined. I thought this was like so cool. Like the level design in this game, it's just awesome. It's very, very creative. While looking cool though, this part was a bit frustrating. There were 0 identifying landmarks because all the cells looked the same, so you had to memorize where to go even more than the other courses. It didn't take too many attempts to pass this one, but remember, if I lost all my continues, I had to repeat all the previous courses, so the time taken ends up being a lot. The final track was another sand course, and since it's the final course, I can only win by getting first place. The worst part about this one is the pebbles scattered around the outside of the course. If you run into one, it forces you to jump and you continue going further off the track. It only took a few tries to get first, and I beat the difficulty tier. Just when I thought I was done, the game unlocked a new difficulty, Advanced. Guess we're going to keep driving. It was already hard enough to beat the last circuit, but now the courses were even more complex, and the CPUs are even better at driving. The second course in this one introduced a new racing environment. It's like an art table or something like that. I don't know, there's pens lying all over the place, and there's these books that are titled Learn How to Be. Learn how to be what? Does the book just explain literally everything ever? It should be more specific in my opinion. Anyway, yeah, this was tough, especially considering this used a type of vehicle we had never used before. Part of the difficulty of the game is not only memorizing the track layouts, but also the physics of each different vehicle. It took about a half hour or so to get past that one, then the next one. In this, thankfully, we were driving tanks. The levels where you use tanks, they're just really easy because they're so slow you don't even need to learn the track. You have more than enough time to just react to all the turns. I easily got first place on that one on my first try. But then the next race had us back in the sand and another course I needed to memorize. I lost and had to go all the way back again. That's the thing that made this game take as long as it did to beat, the fact that you keep having to restart the circuit. I like circuits better when they're scored on a points-based system, but hey, this is what we gotta deal with here. After eventually winning that one, it was on to the final track, back at the dinner table. This one had a troll at the start where you can run into the toaster. What? What was that? Oh my god, I'm in the toaster! What? Don't go in the toaster. It just launches you out and you fall off the table. Like, wow, what a great deal. The cool part about this course is at one point you ramp off the table and you're driving around on the floor below. Whoa, what? Whoa, what? We're down here? Just like they'd introduced a brand new racing environment into the one that we'd already done before. But yeah, since this was the last race, I needed first place, and I was nowhere near that on this first attempt. Back to the drawing board. After over 2 hours of trying, I'd finally memorized every single detail of that course, and I got first place. My goodness. And then, just when you think you're safe, the master difficulty unlocks. The first course was already ridiculous, as it had you driving over these razor-thin rulers multiple times. The car barely even fits on it. The good thing about this is the computer would drive extremely slowly to get over them. This made it pretty easy to get first if you just played it a bit risky. Next track was back on the pool table, except this time you ramped from one table to another, and then you went in a pocket that somehow warped you to a different pocket. Not sure how that works, but hey, at least it looks cool. This one again, it wasn't too bad to win because the computer was super slow on the edge of the table. Next course had us driving through the yard with monster trucks, or so I thought. Whoa, whoa, what? You go off a ramp into the water and somehow the car morphs into a boat. Then you eventually ramp out of the water and you transform back into the monster truck. Some of the level designs, man, they're so creative. Somehow I one-shot this track, like, maybe this circuit won't be so bad after all. Then we were back at the dinner table. This one took half an hour or so to get past, and then the final course was back in the science lab. This one had a teleportation device in it that took you to a different table. Then there were these magnets that pulled you in and caused you to blow up. It actually only took 20 minutes or so to get past this one. The guy ahead of me got yanked in by a magnet, freeing up the finish line for me. And as you might guess, we're not done yet. Now came the rock hard circuit. This one really is the last one though. The first track is another pool table where you somehow teleport from one to another by going in a pocket. It's not the hardest thing ever, but it's definitely not easy. It took about 20 minutes or so to get past this one, which isn't too bad considering this is the final circuit. Next is another science lab course, and this one is really rough. It starts with a bunch of thin bridges going over rulers, but that's not even the bad part. At the end of the lap, there's these cards you have to ramp off of, and they're the biggest obstacle. If you don't hit them at a perfectly straight angle, then you're guaranteed to crash. Not only that, if you don't have enough speed, you don't make the gap. So you have to be going near top speed as well as be perfectly centered. It's just pain, man. It took nearly 30 minutes to get past this one, even though I tried really hard to throw it away. Then came a garden course that it was actually really short. The biggest obstacle here was this narrow pipe you have to enter about halfway through. If you don't hit it going perfectly straight, then you lose a ton of time. After about 50 minutes of grinding away at it, I made it past this one. Keep in mind, the further I get in the circuit, the more tracks I have to repeat after running out of continues. The fourth track was a sand course, and surprisingly, this one wasn't bad at all. It was mostly straight sections. The worst part was near the end there was a bucket you have to drive through with a narrow entrance. It looks like you should be able to go around it, but nah, it blows you up if you try that. I actually won this one on my second try, and probably the closest finish possible. Yeah, baby. The final track, though, it was just brutal. It started with 3 razor-thin bridges, all with tight turns leading into them. That makes it really hard to center yourself for the bridge. Then after that, it leads into 2 ramps, the second of which is very easy to not have enough distance to make the gap. It also seemed like the computer was driving better on this one, but it could have just been in my head. And since it's the last track, I have to get first place. Second won't cut it. No matter how many times I tried, that red car was just always in front of me. I felt like I was driving super well, but it just wasn't good enough. But then a miracle happened. Remember those power-ups I mentioned earlier that's mostly irrelevant? Well, one of them's a missile you can send ahead to crash the other racers. It doesn't hurt them that bad, but it's decent. This course had that power-up near the start, and I had a very well-timed shot which knocked the red car completely off the table. This was perfect. All I had to do was just drive safe and slow and I could coast my way to the finish in first. I was really nervous that I would make some dumb mistake and blow it, but I didn't. I got first and man, it was such a relief to get past that one. It shows your character holding the trophy and congratulates you for beating the challenge, then the credits roll. game complete. So yeah, there you have it. My journey to beating Micro Machines 64 Turbo. This was a series I'd never heard of before this challenge, but I'm glad I played this one. It's honestly quite fun. I could see this being an absolute blast playing with some friends. Apparently the older ones on the Super Nintendo are really awesome too. The single player mode's quite repetitive, but I can appreciate the amount of different tracks they designed when some games have as little as like 5 or 6 tracks. The environments for races were really cool, the graphics, they're decent, and the controls are super smooth. I gave it a 6.5 out of 10 for enjoyability and an 8.5 out of 10 for difficulty. This one was really rough to beat. But yeah, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you did enjoy the video, consider giving it a like, as it does help the channel a lot. And if you like this series, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one. But yeah, thanks for watching, and here's a sneak peek at what is coming next. There are 345 games on the list. It could be anything. We'll see what it is in 3... ad break. No, I'm just kidding. 3, 2, 1. 291. What's that? Oh man, we're playing the next Star Wars game, which is... oh, isn't this the one Barb likes? Star Wars Shadow of the Empire.